today of riding down 13th Avenue and being behind a car in the bike lane. That was special.
Where was that posted?
It was on Active Transportation Advocates
Facebook group.
All righty. Seeing several more of your wonderful faces, I will kick this off. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Mason, and I'm the Eugene's staff representative for this meeting. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is 1, to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan. 2, to represent community and constituent interests in transportation planning decisions. And 3, to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. All verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 10-minute public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. To indicate you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now. The chairs will call on you when it is your turn, and staff will unmute your microphone at that time. When it is your time to speak, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood. At any time during the meeting, you are welcome to ask a question using the Q&A function or use the chat feature for discussion with other attendees and committee members. Comments will be monitored and recorded. Anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from the live portion of the meeting. Questions will be answered at the chair's discretion. As a reminder, civil speech supports everyone in feeling comfortable sharing their perspectives and opinions. Let's give one another the respect of courteous and civil speech tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to the chairs to convene the meeting.
Thank you, Karen, and fabulous to see all of you here tonight on Zoom. I see one hand right away in the attendees. If we could have Duncan go for public comment.
I'm slow, sorry. Okay, Jefferson West Side, we conducted a survey of all our sidewalks for walkability. And I think we're going to have to do it again next year because I really spaced out and did make the criteria include a category for walkable by somebody with a walker or in a wheelchair. But in any case, we decided whether the sidewalk was cracked, was a serious hazard, was unbroken, whatever. And we have a set of spreadsheets which describe all the streets in Jefferson West Side. And if you'd like, I can send that to you. Well, there's a bunch of spreadsheets. We are attempting to map the whole thing, but we have not been able to do that yet. I'll let you know when we got it. That's it.
Wonderful, thank you. I saw a lot of nods both amongst the committee and staff around being interested in hearing or seeing those spreadsheets. So that sounds like really great information, and hopefully we can do and see more of that across the city. Are there any other public comments tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to approving the meeting notes from our last meeting. If I could hear a motion to approve the notes, that would be fabulous.
Before we make that motion, I did have one comment on the notes. On page 4, I marked down as seconding Sue's comments on nonprofits. They were actually Julie's comments. It's not a big deal, but I feel like Julie should get credit for those throughout the rest of history when people look back on these notes. So I would move to approve those notes with that change.
Fabulous. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. If I could see all in favor, if you could give a thumbs up or a verbal confirmation, that would be fabulous. Okay. And anyone sideways? Or is anyone not in favor of approving those notes? Okay, thanks, Anne, for writing in the chat. Okay, looks good. I only see approval, so that passes, and we'll move on to the next thing, which is a shared use path etiquette campaign update, I believe, from Shane.
Yep, actually, and we are going to switch some pieces around in the agenda. Sorry, I didn't highlight that at the beginning. And just because we have Rob here with us at the beginning, we're going to talk first about the ATC self-reflection and big picture discussion in follow-up. So so I wanted to, if that's okay with everyone. Hold on one second here, sorry. Sorry about that. Rob, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here tonight. And I want to share some good news, which is that we are growing the transportation options side of our team. We have been really successful at getting grants to do transportation options work, but we haven't really staffed out our team in that regard. And partially it has to do with going through the city's budget process and getting permission to hire, whether it's for a limited duration position or a permanent position. But I think we all know that there's a lot more we can be doing to incentivize and encourage people to use active transportation modes more and to experiment and try out different strategies. And we have a lot of exciting things that are on the horizon. And so we created a new, what we call acting in capacity AIC transportation options manager position. So we've never had a manager position on the transportation options side. And so Shane was a successful candidate for that. So Shane is now our transportation options manager in an acting in capacity role. So we're really excited for Shane to step up into that position and continue to develop his leadership. And he's been doing a great job, and I look forward to great things to come. And then over time, we're hoping to grow the number of people who work with Shane on that. So I guess that's all I have to say for now. But I'm looking forward to your discussion today. I may turn my camera off at some point, but I'll be listening to most of it.
Great, thanks, Rob. Yeah, so as you know, I've mentioned in the last couple meetings, there's a lot of growth and shifting that's happening, not just for our team, but just in the community in general, and a lot of different things are happening in the active transportation world around bike share and scooter share and different potential projects and programs, some things with CAT and the Nest, all of these pieces that are really up in the air that are all very exciting. And so I'm excited to have a new team that will be, shuffling and forming sort of how we operate as the active or as the transportation options team within transportation. And one of the important pieces of this work will be your input into what we're doing as staff and how we're doing it. And that's some of the self-reflection that we started the discussion last meeting. And I think we want to continue to have. And so that's some of what I want to continue tonight, is to have some of that discussion. I wanted to give a little bit of a piece on what we've heard from you, and then also give a piece on something that Cass put together when we started to think about ATC's role and how to empower ATC. We've always seen ATC as beyond advising staff. We know that we're also educating and growing the community of people who understand transportation in a deeper sense. And we want to continue to provide you with those tools of knowledge and power. And so some of that we recognize that we need to incorporate more into our orientation. And as we start to think about this next phase of bringing on new people and potentially having people term out and having other people come on, we want to make sure that we build a really good solid foundation for people when they come onto the ATC, that they have all the right information, that they understand their role at the ATC, but then also what their role could be outside of ATC if they want to do more, and sort of who all the players are in that. And so I want to kick off with just a little piece of what Cass put together, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we talked about at the last meeting, and then I'll open it back up to sort of where you all want to continue to lead this conversation beyond the pieces that we know we want to carry on. So we'll pull this up here. Oops. Let me share that. You seen the meeting agenda now? Yeah, okay. I just need to close that one down. And this one is not showing. Hold on one moment. There we go. Okay. So this is just the channels of impact. This is where you are working with us on the Public Works Transportation Planning staff level, the field of influence and channel of impact that you have is with us. This is an important piece to understand, that you impact our implementation of our work. And our work is to implement city council policies, right? The city council helps direct what we do. And you, beyond the work that you're doing here to have that direct impact, have this potential of impacting policy development and adoption sort of outside of ATC. And that's through local nonprofits, other commissions, council directly, and other ways. And so we just want to highlight that as a member, you can have an impact on our choices and what work we're doing. We do that through the Active Transportation Strategic Plan, these meetings where you advise us on specific projects and programs. But then there's all this other potential work that you are also doing right now around communication, going to city council, influencing policies, priorities, and goals. And we want to be clear with everyone about those roles and sort of that empowerment piece. So, city council adopts a policy, sets goals, and our work is to bring that to fruition on time and on budget. We don't set that policy. We do have the opportunity to make professional recommendations to council. We do that with, transportation system plan adoption process that are also influenced by and informed by the community input. We implement that. We make choices about details, and that's a lot where your input can affect what those choices are and how they're implemented. And then on these next pieces, we just wanted to introduce someone. A part of the feedback at the last meeting was we don't know who is doing what, and so we just wanted to do a quick overview of who is doing what on the team. Rob, as the personnel management, he is the transportation planning manager, and so he manages all pieces of our team. And these are some of the projects that he's working on specifically. But the buck stops with him. We don't have the full Gantt chart or the full chart of leadership beyond this, but this is the important part for our team when you think about who you're advisory to. And then Reed, and yes, his list is the longest. Is mostly broken down into a lot of very specific projects, but they're all important projects, and they're all of the infrastructure pieces that he's working on, and he has a lot of them. Some of them are programmatic as well, but mostly infrastructure. And he's doing a lot. Those of you who've worked with him on the infrastructure subcommittee know he handles a lot. That's part of our team restructuring. We're hoping to get him some more staff support, some direct associate planner support, and we'll see if we can make that happen, because I think it would be really beneficial to the work that we're doing and directly impact especially the transportation options work. And then Larissa Varela is a transportation planner. She is working on the transportation options strategies for a growing Eugene project, as well as the Franklin Boulevard transformation and a lot of other pieces. She's worked on Vision Zero in the past and done work around transportation options previously in a lot of different areas. So she is leading a lot of our specific planning projects and has some infrastructure projects as well, like the Division Avenue safety enhancements. And then Logan is our Vision Zero transportation planner. So he is working on all Vision Zero related projects, and some of those are very specific infrastructure improvement projects, and others are more broad programmatic and helping to facilitate those, the Vision Zero team and different committees that are helping to implement that strategic plan or that action plan for Vision Zero. Logan's also working on the electric vehicle strategy and traffic calming projects. He's taken the traffic calming project over when Lee Shoemaker left. And so there's a really great, I think that the shifting that's happening within our team has really helped coalesce a lot of things that were in disparate areas. And so traffic calming is one of those that just fits really well with the Vision Zero work that Logan was already doing. And then Kelsey Moore is our community engagement coordinator. She is doing all of our outreach and communications pieces that include social media, InMotion, website, graphics, photos, any of our capital improvement projects. So not only things from our team, but from our third floor, our projects team. She is working with them to get postcards out about, this paving project is coming. Here's, a project website, here's an input piece. And so right now I'm working with her on some Howard Safe Routes to School project infrastructure communication. She is leading those and helps on a lot of our transportation options communications as well, and specifically on some campaigns like 20 is Plenty, Be Safe, Be Seen, Path Etiquette. She's had a role in making that all, have a better voice to it and consistency in our communication, improving language access, and working with a couple other team members on the equity panel as well. So that's been really important work. That's, a position that has only been going now for, I guess it's been over a year for sure, but is really helped our team a lot, both in the transportation team, but our projects team, to have someone who's doing this communication work and helping to bring that message together. And then my position and the new position from a transportation options coordinator to a transportation options manager. As Rob said, we have a lot of great opportunities coming up in the next couple of years with new funding and new programming that we're looking forward to implementing. We've also grown with bike share and now looking at different micromobility options with scooters, that will all fall under the TO program, potentially a program on bike parking and updating our active transportation strategic plan, our TDM program development, all these pieces around programs and projects, Oregon 22, working with Cascadia Mobility on not only bike share, but valet bike parking, bike safety education, all these different programmatic pieces that we want to work with our partners on. And so all of that regional TO collaboration, like with Josh and LCOG and University of Oregon, those pieces, Safe Routes to School, bringing that all into working well together when we implement projects like May is Bike Month and Get There and challenges and those kinds of programs. So I'm excited to have a team where we'll have a couple people focused on these specific projects and hopefully be able to implement a lot more and work with ATC on how best to implement all of those pieces. And then Karen, who is the Assistant Transportation Planner, she is the Active Transportation Committee staff member now, has taken that over from Lee, and we're working on sort of how best to keep these meetings engaging and effective for you. And so we'll be working on ways to keep doing that and make improvements. She's also done a lot of work on the e-scooter pilot program, as well as electric vehicle strategy. And then we'll be working with Larissa on the transportation system plan update. So all of those pieces, the e-scooter pilot program connects a lot with our bike share program, and we're working together on that. So some important work coming up for her. And then Cass, who I have to highlight, helped me today just by putting this together, this presentation and these slides, has a really great perspective, comes from the city manager's office, really understands council and sort of how the structure of the city works and how to make positive change, not only internally, but externally, and is really great in working with partners. So she's going to be she is currently the on the ground person who will help implement these programs. There may be some shifting of roles, and we'll see how things shake out over the next few months, but this is what she's been working on, a lot of transportation options program development, both internally, but then other programs and projects like Streets for People, Open Streets, Art in the Public Right of Way, Play Streets, Sunday Streets, alternatives, and working with me on a lot of different projects. So she's been great, and I look forward to continuing to work with her and others on the team. So that's sort of who we are and where, who you have a sphere of influence with directly through this committee. And then as a private resident or a constituent, you can also use your voice to advocate for what policy changes are important to you, and your voice to a larger group where you can collectively make the big impact together, even beyond ATC. So I just want to highlight a couple things around that. There are all these different organizations working on these in some manner, doing transportation policy advocacy directly, or it's part of the work they do. I just want to highlight also neighborhood associations, some of which have transportation subcommittees like the Friendly Area Neighbors and Whitaker Community Council. And maybe your neighborhood association doesn't have a transportation subcommittee. You could work with them and make that connection as well. And because those neighborhood associations are official advisory bodies of the city council. And so there was some discussion at the last visioning piece around the potential of being advisory to city council. And that could be a way to sort of work within that system of working with your neighborhood associations to have some foot in the door of advisory to city council in that manner. So I just wanted to highlight that piece. And then other committees that are commissions and committees that are doing work that you might work with outside as an individual, and that's the Sustainability Commission and the Planning Commission. I'll highlight that this presentation is part of our revamp of the orientation that we plan to do for ATC, and these will be given out as PDFs to everyone, and so we will send these to you as well. So all these links that are in here are hot links that people can click on. We can also make printed copies with the direct link or the direct email and website information on it, so that people have that as a hard copy if they want as well. So this is our plan. This is sort of a run through of this information for you, so you can tell us what's useful and what else might be helpful that you didn't get in your orientation that you feel might be helpful now that you've been on ATC for a while. Like, oh, I wish I would have known this, or this information would have been helpful. So City Council, I just want to highlight here for those who don't know, they are 8 council members who represent the 8 wards, and Mayor Venice facilitates those meetings and votes only in the case of a tie. And there is public comment time on the first hour and a half of meetings held on the first and third Monday nights. And I think, there's a lot that could be said around there, but I'll leave that to the communications subcommittee. And then others that I just wanted to highlight also is that depending on the issue, as some of you know, Julie, that there are important decisions that can be made around transportation in a lot of different parts of our community, and whether that's 4J building new schools, LTD planning new bus routes, the board of directors at LTD, the school districts, the Lane County Board of Commissioners, all have some sort of influence and impact on transportation, and that might be a good channel of impact for you as well. So I'm going to pause there and see what you think, see what you thought about that information, if that was useful, if you feel like that would be useful for orientation pieces, and what things weren't a part of that should be, or that you weren't in your orientation. Alan, thanks for raising your hand.
I thought it was super useful. I'm getting some feedback here. It was super useful. I think for someone who might be new to the committee, it could go by really fast. So I think it would probably take twice as long. And there were a lot of, there were some acronyms that I think someone who is new to the committee wouldn't be familiar with. So I think it would be important to slow down on some of those. And there were a couple of things that I wasn't familiar with. I'm curious about. I'm curious about Oregon 22 and the Zephyr project. I'm not familiar with those. So I'd like to hear about those, but great job and good photos too.
All right. I don't know who's up next, so I'm just going to call them in order of what I see. So Josh.
Yeah, I agree. That was really great. And there's plenty of stuff, even being around for a while, I didn't know. So it was really helpful. I think helpful for both me as stuff changes and new individuals is sort of how transportation planning fits in the wider context of the city. And I'm also imagining like a graphic of a cross section of the street and who's in charge of what. Because I know signals don't sit necessarily in transportation planning. And so not necessarily putting names to everything, but sort of like, this is how this connects into the work we're doing.
Oh, I love that idea. I can totally picture that of like, this is the street, this is the curb, these are the lights, these are the pipes underneath and like utilities. And so when we do a paving project, it affects all these things underneath it. And yeah. Pete. Nope. Okay, Julie. Oh wait. Yeah, Pete, you put your hand down.
Oh, sorry. Put my hand down, but forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was just about to say, I agree that presentation was excellent and covered a lot of things I think are important. But the one thing that I think, you don't necessarily have to put it in this presentation. In fact, it wouldn't fit. But when I came on ATC, and I've been involved in neighborhood associations and city committees for a while. And if you're new to any of this stuff, the acronym can be pretty daunting. In fact, I have a good friend. She just says I speak in acronyms now. And so what I got when I first came on ATC was a list of the acronyms, and I hope you guys still have that, because that really shortens that that learning curve for what's going on.
Yeah, good point. I'll make sure that's in our orientation materials. Julie?
No. Yes, it is. It was a great presentation. It was very different from the presentation that I got when, you know, I came on the board, and this is just much more, I think it's much more useful. So just to reiterate around the acronyms, if you haven't been involved in transportation planning, this is a really remarkable number, maybe only beaten by recycling. I don't know, but it's pretty bad. And it would be nice to get, you know, to really get some working knowledge. It's taken me just absolutely ages. And this is only slightly relevant to this, but it's before I forget, in that middle housing piece that you mentioned is being worked on right now, parking minimums are a very important part of that. And that's something that is very relevant to this committee, and just wanted to get that out before it leaves my brain. You can comment on those minimum parking standards. Those of us that worked on parking day are a lot more aware about parking issues right now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I know one thing I wanted to have in here too was in our new employee orientation, we show the structure of the city and sort of how, you know, the different departments, and I think showing where public works sits in there, as I think Alan mentioned, and I think the connection between what we do in planning and planning's important work on land use and how those two connect. So yeah, and that's the middle housing is a big part of that. So yeah, thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, agreed. Super useful. The only thing I would add is just like from the perspective of a member of the public wanting to, you know, think about, you know, having a specific issue they want to talk about, you know, posting this or some abbreviated version of it on the transportation planning staff contact page would be really great. You know, it's got everyone's titles and phone numbers, but, you know, nothing beyond that. And it says, you know, you can call anybody and we'll direct you to the right person. But, you know, just as the member of the public, I would want to, you know, have a little bit more information before I call. I'm sure if I go to like a specific project page, it'll list the project coordinator. But, you know, if I have a question again about like, you know, the number of times I've heard Reed rattle off the Public Works phone number. But so clearly this is something that's not quite available enough, you know, never, you know, Sisyphean perhaps. But yeah, just a kind of some way of summarizing this information so that folks can get a good idea of who's there.
682-4800 for those who don't know. Should be in your speed dial. All right. Great. Mary?
I think reiterating what Daniel said is, I don't know if there's a place, like I thought that was a really good list of organizations to get involved with. And I don't know, you know, to see it once, of course, isn't, you know, that's illuminating, but it doesn't, if I need to actually access it, could that also be maybe a link on the website, or, you know, sort of partner, or if to get involved or something, or is there another place to access that information? If I, as a person, wanted to go and find that list, is there a place where it lives, or could there be a place where it lives?
That's a good question, and I will defer to Kelsey on that one. And I think that, but that's something that I will add. I made the note about the on our contact page of sort of calling out who is working on what, and I think that is a good point. And having the resources, I think, of different organizations could definitely fit into some of what we have on there, because we have a good amount of information about bike shops and, you know, where bike parking and sort of important information, safety and laws. And I think that having, you know, a section in there of other organizations working on these topics might fit in. So I'll work with Kelsey on that. That's a good idea.
I will say that I am especially taking note of some of these wonderful suggestions for action items.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Let's see. Okay.
I think Papa has a hand up.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't see it there in the yellow. Papa.
Yeah, first, I'd like to say thank you very much for the presentation. That was really helpful. Being somebody who's new to the committee, I've kind of felt a little overwhelmed trying to figure out what's what and how things work. So what was really useful was seeing the roles of the different people who work for the city, what they actually do. That actually gives me a better perspective of what is going on. So, and also just being able to have access to the information just as a term of reference for somebody like me, I think would be useful and would be able to actually improve my input in the discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Any other feedback? Okay. Great. This is sort of a lot. I don't usually like to put a lot of words onto this many words on my slide, but I truthfully didn't have time to sort of trim it back a little bit. But I just wanted to highlight that Karen did some great pull-outs of sort of what we heard from folks the last time. Make sure we have the right screen on this time. There we go. So this is some of what we heard at the last self-reflection that we had, and I just wanted to take a few minutes and just highlight some of the key pieces that we heard and that came out from that, and that this is a little bit of why we created that presentation and some of the things that we wanted to think about as we move forward and make a plan for ATC and how we best can work as sort of this new transportation team together to make sure that you're the most effective. Not only that you have the information that you need, but that we get what we hope to get from you, that it's a useful and important relationship for all of you and us as staff. So I think this first one was an interesting one to me that I think deserves some more investigation and discussion, and that's this idea of ATC being this connection between the interest groups as a sort of hub and spoke, and that there are these other organizations doing a lot of work, and is ATC the right entity to sort of be that hub of, we don't have one interest, we're really doing work as a broader committee around active transportation, and we can work to bring these organizations together. Whether that's really the role for ATC, I think that's a question as advisory to staff. But I think there are some interesting key pieces there. Like if you were actually connected well to these organizations, it could be beneficial to staff to have you, reporting back to us and sort of figuring out how to best be that hub. So I think that one deserves a little bit more discussion and could be a part of what we talk about. Evaluating projects, I think what's working, what's not, data gathering. I think that's an important role currently. We just need to figure out how to do it better so that you feel more empowered and that this is actually happening. Yeah, I think, Andrea, when you say parking day was a good example of this, was that from what I was just talking about? Or was that earlier and I missed it?
Yeah, no, the first item. Yeah, because we were very, we were cross-pollinating for sure with a lot of different organizations, which was great.
Yeah, and sorry, Duncan, I apologize for the light text on the light background. I will fix that next time because it is kind of difficult to read because it's also small. And then ATC is a buffer between city staff and city council. We talked a little bit about that, of sort of that influence of power. And oh yeah, Karen, do you want to screen share? You have it larger on a Word doc?
Zoom is telling me that you need to stop sharing your screen first.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that worked for you.
There we go. Does everybody see the Word document?
Better? Thank you. All right. So, and then being ambassadors for active transportation, being better at closing loops. And I think this is definitely something that's on staff. We want to make sure that we're keeping track of projects and public comments and our responses. And that's something that I definitely want to commit to doing better at that. And I think that, you know, that's just a systems piece that we need to make sure that we're tracking that better. And I think that we can and will do that. And then this work plan piece, this is something that I think relates directly to the reshuffling that's going on with our work and a work plan that we are creating. Last year was the first year that we had a real team work plan. We've all had some individual work plans, but this last year was the first time that we created a team work plan that I think was really successful. I think it really helped. It was a definite change for our team, but I think we're getting better of how to utilize it. And I think that our plan now is to do a 2-year work plan coming up, and that will really help dictate sort of how we interact with ATC. And we want ATC to have its own work plan. I know that the BPAC created a work plan, and I think that whether it's we create a work plan for ATC and that helps becomes a part of our city staff work plan, or vice versa, I think that we'll sort of see how that shakes out. But I'm definitely happy to work with some of you on what that work plan is. And I have a little pitch here after this about a couple of key pieces of that coming up. And, you know, whether that will need bylaw revamping or not, I don't think that that piece does, but maybe there is something in the future. This piece, I definitely don't want you to feel like a rubber stamp. And so whatever we can do to make sure that we're bringing you information that is that has value for your input, that is actually influencing what's being done, that's going to be important. And we'll continue to do that as much as we can. And then I think that was another piece of lessons learned, and why that presentation came about is that we want you to know, you know, at the very least, you should know, if not the community in general, who's doing what and what, you know, communication is happening, who to communicate with on our team. So, all right. Great. Any thoughts on that overview? Are there any big pieces we missed, or things you want to highlight in there? Yeah, Steve.
I just want to say that, you know, summarizing feedback is a remarkably difficult part of anybody's job, especially when the feedback revolves around your own work. And I think this was a remarkably good summary and extremely self-reflective. I commend you for it.
Yeah, props to Karen for that, for sure. Any other comments? Well, then I'll highlight my my quick pitch here. And, you know, as we think about a work plan, sort of next steps, we need to think about recruiting. I'm going to work with Karen on sort of what our timeline is for that. But I would love, you know, I think Daniel highlighted getting ahead of this and really working on who we're outreaching to and how we're doing that, and making sure that we get a good, representation, good equity representation, and then for me, it's also how we do the onboarding and training of those new members. So I think we'd love to work with you all on that. And then thinking about the Active Transportation Summit, that's something that I brought up at the last meeting, and I think it's time. I think it'd be good for us. We've had walking, biking summits in the past, but it's been many years, and I think the timeline piece for me is just COVID related. I think that I would love to have something happen this spring and spend this winter getting ready to have it, but I'm not sure that we'll be there in the spring or not. But I think it could be something that we lay the groundwork for, and similar to the e-bike expo where we planned it and it's sort of a package, and now we're just shifting it to another time. We could do the same thing, sort of aim for holding it, get everything lined up, and then if we need to shift it, we can. And then that would relate also to the Active Transportation Strategic Plan. The idea is that we would bring the community together. You as the ATC would be a part of that conversation with staff working with you to be the facilitator with these different organizations of BEST and the NEST and Cascadia Mobility, to figure out what are the things that we need to do to reach our goals, right? That to really get more people walking, biking, and taking transit. We've done some of the things from our previous Active Transportation Strategic Plan. We have that Move Huge report to share with you, and that'll go out in November, at the beginning of November, and we'll talk about that at the next meeting of sort of our wrap up of that past 5-year plan. But like, what is the next piece? And I think having this Active Transportation Summit to kick off those conversations and lead into this strategic plan will be an important part. So I just wanted to highlight those pieces of sort of my pitch for what should be in the work plan for ATC. And I'm going to take a second and read Josh's long comment. Agreed. So any other comments or thoughts on that piece too? How are you all feeling about these next steps and just this general visioning piece for the ATC, and what are, yeah, okay. Grace?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing some kind of bigger structural overhauling and changes happening. And I guess I'd like to see more specific detail in like the ATC's work plan in terms of we can aim for supporting along with these big long-term projects, but for members who might be on the committee just for a couple of years, I think it would feel satisfying to have more of those bite-sized pieces where we can take something on and get something done. And I think a lot of the feedback that I was reading through, even though I missed the last meeting, from things that people had highlighted that they really enjoyed about the committee were these little projects and side things that people are getting done outside of these meetings. So I'd love to see those kinds of things incorporated into the work plan and opportunities for people to actually get stuff done and have more structure around what is the purpose of the meeting time versus what we can do in the in-betweens.
Yeah, good point. Okay, great. Karen, can I get a time check? How are we on what our revamped timing was? Do you have that?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, please, Shane?
Just wondering how we're doing on timing, where we were supposed to be. I think we had this till 6:30, so that, right? Revamp.
This was scheduled until 6:25, yes.
Okay, great. Perfect. Well, good. That's all I think I have for that one. And so we can get into some of the other pieces here. So just to remind folks, the other pieces on the agenda that are coming up, we have the shared use path etiquette campaign, where I'm going to give a brief presentation and update on that. And then we're going to have a little discussion about sharrows and infrastructure, and just some pieces that Daniel wanted to, had brought up, and I think other people expressed interest in talking about. And then we'll do information share with some project updates. I think we have some general project updates to share on, and yeah, so 1 minute here.
Before we get into all of that, Alan still has a hand as well.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I had a comment, sort of a follow-up on feedback that I think might be interesting. There was a tradition, I'm not sure if it's still ongoing, that when ATC members finish their term, that they were given a few minutes to speak about what the ATC has accomplished, but also what kind of advice they would give to future ATC members. And I think it'd be interesting to go back into the minutes for, say, last 5 years or maybe even longer, and collect all those and see if there's any patterns, or see if there's some things that we can glean from that, both as a committee as well as staff. You're muted, Shane.
Thank you. I was saying that was a great point, and I'm glad Karen's getting that down, because she's probably going to do that.
That is another great action item, and I am looking forward to sorting through those notes.
And then I saw also that someone mentioned an annual half-day retreat. So that's something that we can consider to do some deeper planning or work. I think for me, that in the past, the Walk and Bike Summit has almost worked as part of that, because it was a time that the ATC members or BPAC members at the time came together and sort of had this sort of time together to work on something and accomplish something, and sort of learn from each other and talk about, you know, things sort of outside as well. It was a social time, so that could be that time as well, but it could also be that a retreat could be useful. Mary?
I don't expect to get into this right now, unless it's a really quick answer, but I was just wondering about the fact that, like, there's a sustainability, as I understand it, a sustainability commission that can, I think they have a different kind of, I don't know if the word is power or influence or way of interacting, where they can make suggestions, I think, or to the council, the city council. And I'm just wondering, you know, how, when this got set up, if there's any chance that we would ever want to look at that, or if it's even possible. So I'm sure there's some history there. So like I said, I don't expect to get into it right now, but I just wonder about the difference and how it's set up, or if we'd ever be able or want to take a look at that.
Yeah, it's the Sustainability Commission is, like the Planning Commission is advisory to council. They are directly advisory to council. When the BPAC was originally set up, I think that was a hope of some people, but that didn't happen, and I don't know the history and sort of why that is. But I do think that changing that would be really difficult. I think that the city council has a lot on their plate, and to have another advisory committee would involve quite a bit to make that happen. But if that's, you know, I think that the Sustainability Commission is really engaged and involved, and they have, I think, a direct connection to a lot of the active transportation work. Yeah, and Rob highlights that Sue has served on both committees, and might have some good insights. She's not here tonight, but she's also on the pavement bond measure committee, review committee. But I think that yeah, changing that would be a pretty big step. And in the interim, working with the Sustainability Commission as well as neighborhood associations could be a more direct link to that council influence besides going as individuals. So. Okay. Anything else on that one? All right. Let me get this up. Oops. Sorry. There we go. Whoops. I'm gonna switch it again. There we go. So I just want to give a quick update on the Path Etiquette campaign because we did implement that this summer and it was a great start. And I just wanted to share some key pieces. Just to give some historical reference, the Path Etiquette campaign was something that we had started years ago to think about because we had been hearing about issues on our path, and we don't have, didn't have any signs. What signs are there? Our poor placement of park rule signs, and we looked at what other communities were doing, including ones that had a similar message to what we were aiming for. We gathered, from Marin, Boulder, Atlanta, different messages that were sort of fit in those communities and were close to what we wanted to do it for ours. One of the ones that resonated was this one in Dallas called Happy Trails. We like the simplicity of it. We took some elements from that, some elements from some other programs, and then what we were hearing about our system. Springfield also created their own Path Etiquette campaign, and we kind of mashed a little bit of that, of taking this idea of just using these simple icons, characters into something with a little bit more color, but with those simple speed messages. And so most of you have hopefully seen these on the path or in motion or in communication pieces, but these are our main messages. As you can see, there are two about sharing the path. One that is everyone's welcome, talking specifically about all modes, all types of people welcome on the path, without using a lot of words, just simple pictures and words. And then the other one with the share the path is don't use more than your half. It's a big piece of this communication, obviously, because we also have the stay right, pass left. There were some interesting conversations being held on some professional bike ped planner boards about some communities who have pedestrians walking on the left side and why people thought that was a better practice. And we really feel like this stay right, pass left is very clear, helps with the flow of traffic, as long as people follow these rules, especially on passing, calling out your left, ringing your bell, and path courtesy just overall is a big message that we tried to get out during this piece. And then dogs on a short leash. And then the one that held the most discussion from community members was this one about go a safe speed. And so where we say max of 20 miles per hour, a lot of people say that's too fast. And we agree in a lot of conditions on our paths that is too fast, but 20 miles per hour is the maximum. And we tried to be clear, and I think we got better in our messaging as we went along about 10 to 12 miles an hour is a recommended speed when it's crowded or there are other people on the path. 20 miles per hour is only when there is no one else around and you are able to go 20 without impacting other users. And so that is a park rule that was already in the park rules book. So we felt with consistency of sticking with that rule, as well as e-bikes have a maximum assist of 20 miles per hour. Once they go over 20 miles per hour of assist, they're no longer e-bikes, and so they're not allowed on the path. So it's a nice round number that fits well with existing sort of rules and protocols. We also have our 20 is plenty campaign. So it fits really well. We just had to refine that is the maximum. Generally, if it's crowded, we should be going 10 to 12 miles an hour, maybe 15 if there aren't that many people and you can pass safely. But sort of how to get that across is something that we're continuing to refine. But those are our main messages. This is what we did. We printed signs, placed them on paths on a rotating schedule. We did have to print some more because they were stolen. I don't think it's because they were so cool that college kids are hanging them in their dorm rooms, but we did find some in the Amazon Creek. I think it's just sort of simple vandalism. So we want to figure out better ways to place those than the yard signs. So we're working on those for the next round. We did some tabling events to give people's feedback on the messaging, to ask questions, to get an idea of where we were. A lot of people got, what the speed limit on the path was wrong, and a lot of people got what is allowed on the path and what's not wrong. So we figured out how best to message our information that was going out to people. We sent out a press release, did social media, in-motion partner outreach. We are putting up posters on park kiosks today and tomorrow. They're going up, and they will look like this. They're sort of a consolidation of that information. So those will be on park kiosks, and we're partnering with parks to figure out the best way to get other messaging out there as well beyond these yard signs. And we did some monitoring. We went out and took a speed gun out with us and did some monitoring. I don't have the data to present to you tonight, but I can tell you that there were some interesting findings, some 35 mile an hour e-bikes, which were really mopeds or motorcycles that we monitored. And most of those higher speeds were when we were over by the Knickerbocker Bridge and in that Willamette natural area. So that was interesting. And it's a wide open space, open road. Some of the other monitoring we did was when there were more people. So what we did find is that as there were more people tended to slow down a little bit. There was still some speeding, some people traveling at 20 when there were other people around. So our next step, and this is kind of jumping down to this future, the fourth bullet there about more analysis of speeds and striping, and also this potential enforcement. We're looking at how are we going to get out there and actually start doing that enforcement now that we know. I mean, we knew what was going on before, but now we know in greater detail, and we've already done some messaging. So we want to go out now and say, okay, we've done some messaging. Here's some more, directly to the people who are have infractions of this bike is not allowed. So the plan is to do some of that direct education and then enforcement. So sort of broad general education, direct education, and then potential enforcement. So we're going to work with our park ambassadors and police. We have one more step in the education piece. So we are working on a video that we're hoping to film in the next few weeks before the weather turns too bad, and we maybe get some beautiful fall colors in there. And so we are going to be looking for people to be in that video. So I want to make that call out to ATC members. If you are interested, we'd love to have you as a part of that Path Etiquette video. And then our plan in the future is to use this campaign in rotation with others. So we have our Every Corner is a Crosswalk. We've done Eye to Eye. We have our 20 is Plenty. We have this Path Etiquette campaign. And I'm working with Kelsey to come up with our plan on campaign rotations and sort of how we implement them each year and when we do that and how we keep some consistency so that people hear the same message over and over in the same way, but then also change it up to reach different audiences and do different things with it as well. So that's my information on where we are and where we've been and where we're going with the Path Etiquette campaign. Grace.
I'm just curious if there are any evaluation or metrics for how to track the success of campaigns such as this.
Yeah, I think some of the metrics that we have now are the monitoring of the speed. So we have some numbers, and we plan to go back and do more of that, as well as the quizzes that we did at the tabling. We plan to do another tabling event and see how awareness has changed. Do you have other ideas on other metrics you think we should be doing? Sorry, Steve. Okay, Steve, you have your hands up, but is that not?
Yep. Yeah, I've thought that the graphics, I've been watching this for several weeks now. I think the graphics are remarkably good, really great at communicating. This was discussed this week, 2 nights ago at the BPAC, Springfield BPAC meeting, because they're looking very closely at the program, as I'm sure you're well aware, and they're interested in using the same graphics, the same program, although the feedback did come up that the maximum 20 speed looked like the bike was shooting flames out the tires. So the question was whether that was the right message, but the question came up as to whether or not there are Spanish language versions that have been made and printed. I thought I had seen some, but I honestly don't know.
We haven't yet, but we had, I think, an earlier version of some of them, and then we didn't get them approved, and so we need to we haven't done that yet. So
is there a plan to do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I definitely Emma and I are planning to talk about how best to partner on that in the future. One of the pieces is the video. We're talking about doing part of that in Springfield too. Papa?
Yeah. First, I'd like to agree with Steve too. That those path etiquette signs on the path, I noticed them on Amazon Parkway. I thought they were pretty effective, especially since I noticed a couple of days later they were moved. So that kind of you helped keep my attention. Otherwise, if they were there at the same place every day, after a while you just ignore them. And the other thing I wanted to ask was in terms of monitoring. Now, for the vehicles monitoring the speed, you have the policemen who put those speed monitoring things which tell you exactly how fast you're going. Is there anything equivalent that could be put on the bike path? Because I think that would be really effective. A lot of people go fast, they don't really know how fast they're going. That might be a good way to.
That's a great idea. I think we talked about that early on, and that got left behind. And I think that's a great idea. Those speed trailers can pick speeds up, especially if it's nearing 20. I think that it's either 10 or 15 that it takes to pick it up, but that would work for sort of the maximum speed. You also want to be careful that that you have a shutoff speed so that people don't try to go and see how fast they can get going and see how high they can get it. So I know that when they put them out on the roads, they have a certain speed where it shuts off, so that if you're trying to go 60, like, no, it's going to shut off at, there's a 20-mile-an-hour zone, it's going to shut off at 30. So you're speeding, but we're not going to tell you how much. That's a great idea. Sorry, Julie.
I just had a question, given that the biggest problem on the paths is really the e-bikes and e-things in general that go much faster than, pedals. I wondered if there's been any talk about enlisting the help of the places that sell them so that when they sell an e-bike or a scooter, that they provide information and just say, hey, here's the deal, this goes, you're good. This is the rules about what happens on a bike path. This is, I just wondered if there was any talk about.
Yes, most definitely. We have talked about that, and the e-bike expo was sort of our foot in the door, and was sort of how we started to build that relationship with them, and was going to be a part of sort of our education with them before the e-bike expo actually started. Of like, hey, here's the path etiquette that we're doing. This is an important part of that is the speed. We're hearing this. We just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. These are the rules. These are the laws. They were part of our partner outreach around park ambassadors and the people who have a direct influence and interaction with the people who are using the path and using these e-vehicles. I will say that in our speed monitoring, those going over 20 were not just e-bikes. I had several club riders, or those decked out in full gear, pass me at 25 on non-e-bikes. So there is that too, but yes, e-bikes are definitely, I think, increasing the numbers in a much larger way. So I think having that direct contact with those shops is important, and making sure that they know that if you sell an e-bike over 20 mile an hour of assist, then you're selling a moped or a scooter to people, and you need to tell them that they can't take it on the shared use path network. Because they can be sold, they just have to be used in the roadway and not on our shared use path system. And they have different rules that they have to follow. Oh, thanks, Cynthia, for letting us know that Eugene Electric Bike Store did tell you that laws of the top speed. That's good. Andrew?
I was actually just hoping to follow up on that question, Shane. So are you allowed to ride those in the bike lane, or are they, I guess I'm not really sure. I assume that it's not legal to drive your car in the bike lane. If there is, well, no, even if there's not another lane, you probably shouldn't be in the bike lane. But it's not illegal to ride your bike in the roadway when there's no bike lane. So how does that work with those e-bikes? Do you know? Well,
To be honest, I don't know the fine detail of that. That seems like a question for a lawyer that I don't want to answer. Yeah, I just do know that at least for our shared use path network, that e-bikes that have assist over 20 miles an hour are a class 3 and are not allowed on our path network.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good answer, Shane.
Yeah.
Good enough answer.
Yeah, it's good enough. I know it's good, but it's good enough for tonight. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think that's it. What is next on our agenda here? Shared use path etiquette.
Sharrows.
Sharrows and infrastructure. Karen or Daniel, do you want to kick this one off? I can add some pieces here in a minute, but I want you to kick it off.
So this topic was requested by Daniel for discussion at this meeting. Gosh, give me one moment to pull up that.
I might have said some incendiary things in your email. My apologies. So, I mean, so I have some strong opinions about Sharrows. But basically, like, I don't want to poison the well here. Basically, so in general, my question is, to what extent, so we're talking about, like, so we all want to increase accessibility and equity on the roadway and safety primarily. And so my question with Sharrows is, to what extent are they a good use of limited resources as opposed to other things that we could do with that same money? And I think we talked about this in the past. I seem to remember Reed or Shane, saying something very reasonable about, it's a good way of kind of showing people, especially on narrow roadways when cyclists should be taking the lane anyway, and kind of giving a signal to cars that people are doing it. And I feel very similarly to Shara's as I do about marked crosswalks, where when you mark a crosswalk, it makes the unmarked crosswalk seem less legitimate. And so my question to the broader committee is, to what extent are Sharos a good use of funds, as opposed to other things that we know for sure do promote safety and equity in the roadway? Things like marking bike lanes and bike boxes and wayfinding, and like things like paint in the roadway, street murals, many types of things you can do.
Before that larger discussion occurs, which I am very excited to hear all of your thoughts on, I did bring this specific topic to Reed, and I want to let you know some of the comments that he made re Sharos. So saying that they are shared lane markings, they are used sparingly in Eugene. Mostly they are used on neighborhood greenways in conjunction with traffic calming or diversion to better classify the street as a bicycling street. For example, Alder Street from 19th to 30th. They serve as a placemaking function. They also have been used where marking on-street bike lanes was not an option due to the presence of commercial districts where on-street parking is deemed valuable for customers and for freight. For example, Blair Boulevard and Willamette from 13th to 11th. The necessity for on-street parking is another discussion entirely. Additionally, shared lane markings have been used to indicate a change in direction for route finding. Examples include Van Buren, north of First, where there is a directional Sharo, or the markings through the Lane County Fairgrounds, south of 13th on Monroe. Also, that Eugene is supplementing a standard shared lane marking with bikes may use full lane signs in commercial districts. Experimentation with super Sharos is also present in the community. For example, Willamette Street uses a standard chain lane marking with dashed lines on both sides to highlight the path of bicycle travel. The spacing of the markings is also reduced to provide better awareness of bicycle users within the travel lane. So far, community response has been positive. Additionally, the University of Oregon has used standard shared lane markings with a green backing on 13th Avenue. And there is a note there, Josh, to ask you if you have received feedback about that. And lastly, shared lane markings should not replace dedicated on-street bicycle facilities. There is a note there that it is common for communities to use them as a replacement for bike lanes, but Eugene does not do that. And if you feel otherwise, we encourage you to please provide a list of streets where shared lane markings have been used inappropriately so that we can audit those locations.
And I also just wanted to share something really quick, because this is a video. If you haven't seen it, it's about Eugene's shared lane markings, and I love it. And I hope you do too. Reed helped in making it. And it's just fun and it's short. So here, ooh, I wonder if I turn the audio on. Hold on, let me turn this off. Let's see, share sound. Because you gotta have the sound for this one. It's really fun. Hopefully it works.
Go!
Isn't that a great one? Anyone know what that music is from? Andrew, you have your hand up.
Well, yeah, thanks for playing that, because actually I was going to say, one, if we didn't have shares, we couldn't have awesome videos like that. So I'm glad you played it so everyone knows what I'm talking about. So there's a question embedded in here with some editorial. So I generally agree with you, Daniel, that I find the functionality of Sharos to be much more to like let me know that the city has done something that they think makes the street good. Because I don't think that drivers respect Sharos more than just a blank street. But it is helpful, I think, for me with wayfinding. If I'm in a new place, Eugene does a much better job than some other communities, as Reed noted, in maybe putting those on greenways. But I mean, I guess just to be really frank, like our unprotected bike lanes don't really they don't offer any actual protection more than a Sharo does. Maybe drivers respect them more. Maybe that's just because there's more space and you're out of their way. But I'm probably not the only one on the Zoom that's been joined in the bike lane on like 18th or some really busy street by a vehicle that had a distracted driver. So, I'm not sure that regular bike lanes provide that much more protection. That's why I think we need to be talking about protected bike lanes, not just, really not just paint. We need separation physically. But I was curious, I guess, about the city's use of them from a cost perspective, kind of in your framework, Daniel. I had always assumed that they were cheaper than striping a full bike lane. But I saw something recently that might not be true. And I was curious from the city's perspective, kind of what the cost differential was. Because if they're not cheaper,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it's not something that we put in because it's less expensive. I think that it's purely an infrastructure piece of whether that street and sort of the classification of that street would have bike lanes. Like we wouldn't put bike lanes on Monroe. That's clearly a neighborhood greenway, or Alder. Like Alder is a neighborhood greenway, and so it's just an infrastructure choice. I mean, I do think that I could see where the Sharos are thermoplastic and bike lanes are paint generally, and so there could be a difference in price there, and the paint's cheaper than thermoplastic. But I think that it's a different sort of tool for a different kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, as a follow-up then, because I generally agree with you that they're super appropriate in certain contexts, but maybe the ATC, we could talk about the context under which they're appropriate. And I think that the only time that I really find them to work really well are like the sections of 12th where they're kind of not the diverters, because I have diverters in my neighborhood, but the kind of access control on 12th or on Alder. Those tend to work pretty well because they end up being super low car traffic. But I think it would maybe be a good discussion to talk about what other interventions are needed if we're going to talk about using Sharos. So things that physically slow people, like raised crosswalks and chicane.
Right. And that, I think that was one of Reed's points too, though maybe wasn't his email, but some other point, that a discussion of, we never use just Sharos, or at least now we don't. We might have in the past, but we wouldn't just use Sharos. That it's generally done with something of traffic calming, and whether that's diversion or speed humps or, that's, yeah. Josh?
Yeah, so I just want to note, we've talked about this at Infrastructure Subcommittee with Reed many times in the context of when he uses, or when the city will use Sharos and when they won't. And I don't know of any recent circumstance where the city has decided to put down Sharos instead of a bike lane, that if the bike lane's the appropriate treatment, that's what they do. And then I just want to note, on campus, we are trying to use Sharos to both indicate where bicyclists should go in the sense of using them directionally, and also we're trying to use them to orient a bicyclist where they should be traveling in the lane. Some of our bike facilities are more like parking lots than bicycle facilities. And so we've tried to place Sharos in a way that encourages cyclists to be as far away from that row of parked cars as possible. I don't know how effective that is. It'd be really interesting to have a class do a study of whether they're actually accomplishing what we're hoping they're doing. But I just wanted to address, because Reed brought it up in his email.
Yeah, you hear that, Ann? We need that study. I think some of that, it would be interesting. I think some of those studies might have been done, but it would be interesting to see in our specific case, because of how we place them might be different than other cities. And that's what in that video, I think that was one of the things I loved about it, is like, ride over these, you get, bonus points. And if you notice at the beginning, there was a disclaimer, like, you will not increase your speed by riding over sharrows. Not yet. Alan.
I'm wondering if there is a policy about the maximum street classification for using sharrows.
There is. I can't tell you what that is. Reed could. We do have a street design guidelines that I don't know if they're officially approved, but they're being used. They're approved enough that they're being used, and that does call out where they can be used. Like, I don't think the Monroe project would match that street design guideline. I think for me, that's one of the classic examples of a tough situation where, like, you have to either take out a lot of parking in a commercial district where it's really difficult and put in bike lanes, or you have these sharrows on a street that has more traffic than you would want on a real neighborhood greenway.
Right. Another question related to that has to do with center striping. It seems to me that sharrows work better with higher volume traffic, not real high volume traffic, but moderately high volume traffic, where there isn't a center striping. And I suspect there's a policy about, street classification or daily traffic for striping.
Yeah, there is, but I think that's a really good point. And that's a good conversation I'd like to have with Reed and traffic operations too, because I know that there are times where, like, there was some discussion when the 24th project happened sort of on the West 24th near ATA, where the neighborhood didn't want to have parking removal and put in bike lanes. And so there was some discussion of putting in sharrows there, and sort of, the city didn't want to do it because of the higher traffic volume that was there. But there was also some discussion of placement of sharrows and center lane striping. And I don't know what came out of that for other projects. But I agree that if there's a center line stripe and sharrows, that people are less likely to feel comfortable moving over into that other lane.
As much as for the person on a bicycle as it is for the vehicle that might want to pass. And right. if the traffic isn't too high, then the motorist often feels comfortable going around, and the bicyclist doesn't really mind because there's enough room for that to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I always enjoyed the sharrows as a cyclist. I feel like that video game hero that collects points when I ride over them. That's fun. But the thesis I heard here is that they aren't really worth the money because they don't change the behavior of drivers. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure they don't change the behavior of all drivers. But before I accepted the idea that the presence of sharrows doesn't improve the awareness for some car drivers about cyclists, I'd want to see some data, because I just don't really accept that that's true.
Any key points on from the discussion in the chat that anyone wants to highlight, or other questions or comments? I'm going to put down your hand. Anyone else has? Daniel?
Yeah. So it's a question of, like, what is coming first from. So to the point about, like, marking a greenway. right? So the directionality I had not considered before. So if you have, cyclists consistently going the wrong direction in a way that's unsafe, that makes a lot of sense. If you have a greenway that is turning left for whatever reason, before the Willamette Wiggle got fixed, you would come down on Oak and then turn left and then right onto Willamette. And having something right there made a lot of sense. I think there was a sign there actually. But yeah, that kind of makes sense. As for marking a greenway, I'm a little confused as to how that helps, because when you're, if you're on the road, right, if you're on the greenway, then you probably know you're on a greenway because it's been designed in such a way as to make you comfortable. The sharrow isn't the thing that makes you feel comfortable. It's the street trees, it's the narrow lanes, it's the concrete diverters for cars, it's the slower speed limits, all of those things that actually make things feel safe as a vulnerable user. As for how to find a greenway, I don't think sharrows are typically serving that purpose. They're once you're there, you feel, and then as for getting kind of feeling more comfortable taking the lane. Again, yes, Josh, to your point about crosswalks, this kind of same argument applies. If I'm taking the lane here, then and I question whether somebody, a driver, somebody in a car is even going to know what it means. But if it does mean, yes, please take the lane here, then am I then, less, like, is it less okay to take the lane anywhere else? And that's not true, of course. But again, it's a messaging thing, right? It's hard enough to get people to just, walk right and pass left on a shared use path. And on the road, you're having to, communicate that with just this one little ideogram, the sharrow. And, I think it has the potential to do some harm as well as good by confusing people. This is definitely, this is not, anecdote is not data, but, I have had more than one negative interaction on a street with a sharrow. And the sharrow didn't help me, right? Because if the driver's confused, then the driver's confused.
Right, but if the sharrow wasn't there,
I don't think it would have made a difference.
Had the same reaction, right?
Well,
so
maybe no. And what this was, right? This was on shoot, the one that goes past the library and then the Kiva and on down, not Oak, but anyway, yeah. So right behind the 13th and Olive complex. And right there's a crosswalk that's protected with a small concrete island. And there's a bit of a concrete divider that separates the north and south, or the east, north and southbound lanes. And there's a sharrow right there. And that's like, yeah, hey, bikes, you should take the lane because it's not safe for cars to pass right there. So in that case, it kind of makes sense to have one there because there could be a big problem if someone tries to pass in that narrow space. Yeah, I don't know.
So I feel in this conversation echoes of some of what we talked about when 13th Avenue first opened, about cyclists in sort of different stages of comfort and what is the best way to reach everyone. And I don't know that there's like a firm answer on like, are sharrows working? Do they not work? Should we create comfortable facilities that are slow, or should we just throw bicyclists in with traffic? And the real fix here is to just get vehicles to respect bicycles no matter what. I don't know what the answer there is, but I feel like we all agree that we're all going to be safer if we can get more cyclists on the road. So drivers are more used to that. And so I'm on board with anything we can do that accomplishes that.
Yeah, which I think it gets to both those study points that, and Anne mentioned this in the chat, that the only research that she's seen, and I've seen this too, is that how sharrows don't necessarily increase the comfort among would-be cyclists on the road. And so it is a piece of infrastructure that is sort of for existing riders, and it's not necessarily something that's going to get more people riding, right? Like we know that protected bikeways do. We know that you build those kind of facilities and more people ride them. But I would argue that sharrows aren't necessarily meant to be that. But a fuller menu of options with sharrows as part of it, of a neighborhood greenway, will get you to that point. Like, that doing diversion and speed humps and chicanes and traffic calming measures with speed humps would raise that comfort level enough. Just putting sharrows on a street, I don't think does. And I think that research pans out. But that's not necessarily how we want to do them. And like Reed said, if there are certain places, like that's what we want to hear from ATC too. Like what is it that we could do better? And it's our job to figure out how to do it better. And can we do it better? Are there or are there constraints, and how do we overcome those constraints? Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Shane, because what I was thinking of whenever you were talking was like, right, like we had this problem where we know it's one of our goals, not just us here, right, but the city council has adopted a goal of getting more people on bikes to help achieve lots of our other goals. And sharrows don't really do that. But at the same time, right, like what's going through my mind is actually like sharrows don't do that because, right, like we're working in a context where many of our streets are basically there are just too many cars on them, right? Like we need protected bikeways because 13th had too many cars and people didn't feel safe on it, right? So we need concrete and things. But actually, like if you ride on 12th, right? If you get someone to have that experience, riding on 12th is really pleasant. I think it's a lot more pleasant than Monroe because Monroe doesn't have the kind of physical concrete that stops people from turning in. But you get someone on a street with no cars, right? And kind of, I don't need a sharrow. And I think our goal is more streets where sharrows, like we don't even need them, like save the money, don't waste, don't introduce more plastic in the world. But all the infrastructure we're kind of talking about is because we're trying to shoehorn this bike thing into a system that wasn't designed for it. And it makes me kind of wonder actually like whether there should be advocacy work not on, I mean, yes, for more protected bike lanes, like everywhere all the time, but at the same time, right, like everyone wants to live on a cul-de-sac. No one wants to live on 6th and 7th if they're given the option. So maybe some of our advocacy work too could be put towards, why aren't there more greenways, right? Why do so many streets have to have so many cars? Just a thought.
Yeah, I think Daniel mentioned this too, and Andrew, I think that's a good point. In an otherwise well-designed greenway, does the addition of a sharrow increase safety and comfort? Does wayfinding? Yeah, I think that's a good question. I personally love them. I have to say, when we started the bicycle pedestrian plan, the bike ped master plan, which became a part of the our transportation system plan, I really advocated for not sharrows, but the bike boulevard markings. I don't know if anyone's ever ridden in the East Bay of California, but they have these amazing bike symbol with these letters that say bike boulevard, like BLVD, on them that take up the whole lane. And it's really striking. I don't know if they're still using them, but I thought they were very effective. Again, I don't have the studies to back it up, but anecdotally, as a professional riding 5 years as a cargo bike courier on the system, I found them very effective. But the tool in our toolbox is sharrows. And I think you're right that the real key is the traffic calming and especially the diversion. And I think that's a piece that we have not done much diversion. The 19th Avenue is the last diversion that we did, 19th and Alder. Before that, we haven't done any since the 80s, pretty much. And the reason that 12th and parts of 15th and parts of Broadway are so wonderful is because of diversion. And I think that's a real key piece, that if we want to increase our neighborhood greenways, and I think that the neighborhood greenways are a key piece, because we can't build protected bikeways everywhere, and that we have these great arterials with parallel streets that are quiet neighborhood streets that are an important part of our network. It's in our transportation system plan. And so but to do diversion requires the political will, right? Because you have people who benefit from it and people who feel like it's a detriment to them as far as their access, and how, if they don't live on that street, it's going to push the traffic from that street onto their street. So there are real political and sort of structural issues around them. But I think you're right in that the tool, the Shero, is a piece of our toolbox, but it has to be integrated with the neighborhood greenway design overall.
Lots of excellent discussion here on this topic. Just being conscious of time, I do want to move us along to the last couple of agenda items. So we still have subcommittee reports as well as information and project shares. So if we could jump right into those subcommittee reports and perhaps continue the share conversation at a later date. What subcommittee would like to go first?
So I missed the last infrastructure subcommittee, which was yesterday or Tuesday. What got talked about then? Because we also had one the month prior that we had some stuff to talk about here, I think.
I can share briefly about the infrastructure subcommittee from Tuesday. It was just myself, Ann, and Papa. And I think a lot of our discussion was around how we might need to find a different time or different structure for making it so that those meetings are more effective and hopefully happening before these meetings, because in the past they've gone back and forth being before and after, and that timing is challenging. We also talked about wanting to have a little bit more of a clear work plan and how that could tie into the broader ATC work plan discussion. And we spoke a little bit about 13th Avenue as well.
I can speak to communications. So we talked primarily about how to be connecting with decision makers more. We talked about there have been a couple of recent bike riders with members of government, and also continuing to form plans to be giving testimony at City Council, especially around upcoming decisions around middle housing and the attached parking minimum discussion.
And I can report about programs. It was me, Mary, and Sue, small group. And mostly we talked a little bit about the parking day debrief that Claire Roth from BEST organized, which was actually a really inspiring, amazing group. And, I walked away thinking, wow, this is such a great thing. And the first bullet item being about hub and spokes, I felt like that meeting we had really exemplified that. And in that meeting, let's see, Cascade Mobility was there, several ATC members, BEST, and also somebody from Better Housing Together, Karen, is that right? And we talked a lot about what we think we should do next, like how we can spin this off and continue on. And we also talked about other types of implementations that we could collaborate on. And Karen brought up Oregon 22 and what we can do around that in terms of programming. So that was all really interesting discussions. And we also, in our meeting, so we talked about that debrief, the three of us in our meeting. And then a pet peeve of mine has just been the lack of bike racks a lot of the time going around in private businesses and talking to people that want to be able to put in secure parking for their employees, but they don't have the money to do it. And they're like, what, knowing I'm on ATC, they're like, what can I get from the city to help me do that? So that's something we talked about. And we also talked a little bit about walking school bus, which we hope to get started on in the spring. Mary, anything else? I don't remember.
Thank you. And before we move on, I just want to take a moment if either Andrea or staff could share what Oregon 22 is. Oh, yes. Thank you, Shane.
I just put in the link. Yeah, I just put in the link. That's the World Athletic Championships. Not only will that be on campus, but we are also having the city of Eugene will be hosting a festival at the new Riverfront Park. And so there's going to be some really important connections of activities and the new Riverfront Park with bike share, valet bike parking, and active transportation corridor connections. So we're working with them on the transportation pieces around that, not only for the event of Oregon 22, but also the festival. We'll hopefully have some folks. We're having our first major team meeting. There's been some work in the background happening, but in November. So maybe in the December or January ATC meeting, we can come and talk about Oregon 22 and active transportation. And just real quick on the city-owned bike corrals, we can talk about that. And also, Rob and I were just talking today about a bike parking program and bike racks, sort of focusing on downtown, but also beyond that. And it really connects with the work that we're doing with Cascadia Mobility and their sort of work with virtual hubs that they did on campus with Josh. And we now have, for those who don't know, this is a bit of a project update too. The service area for Peace Health Rides has been extended to the Woodfield. South Willamette is done. And so we did that without having a permit yet, but we decided to just put in some virtual hubs. So you can go park out there at standard bike racks in what we're calling virtual hubs, similar to what we did at U of O with Josh.
Shane, I'm sorry, I missed where is it being extended to?
Field Station, which is Willamette area. So
And your audio is breaking up. If you could just drop that into the chat as well, that would be great.
Woodfield Station on South Willamette.
Thank you. Josh, Kay.
Yeah, I just want to highlight something that came up at the Subcommittee for Infrastructure last month, which is Reed giving a pretty impassioned commentary on some of the challenges that public works engineering is running into getting projects done that are external to the city. And there's a lot of great projects that are funded, that are planned, that are ready to go, and just keep getting delayed and stacking up because there aren't construction workers, or bids that they send out to companies come back super expensive or not at all. And I don't know where this committee fits in with like helping construction companies or like starting a construction company. I don't know, but we've got like a lot of projects that we want done that are funded, that are approved, ready to go. And I really hope we can find some way to assist the city with this, because the backlog's only going to grow. So prior years and decades, we've had funding problems or things wouldn't be approved. Well, they're approved now, they've been funded, and we still can't build them. And so we need to help break down whatever that last barrier is.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Are there cities that do their own construction? Is it always hired out? That's a stupid question, but.
That's not a stupid question. There are cities I think that do, but I don't think it's very common. Yeah, Rob could probably speak to that if he was able to, but.
I'm not really sure. I would guess probably just for small projects. And like, installing bike racks and bike corrals would probably be an example. There's probably cities that do that. And we could, when we get, I think Shane may have mentioned this a minute ago, but when we get to the point of starting our own bike parking program, we can decide, do we want to hire a local company to install bike racks, or do we want to do it ourselves?
there might be some nonprofit who has some experience installing bike racks or bike hubs. Karen, you want to give some staff updates before we get other info share?
Yeah, I can do that. Thanks, Shane. So some of the staff updates that I have on board to share with y'all include that the South Willamette Street has work is been paved and striped. There is pedestrian lighting, street trees, and signal at 27th and Willamette will be finalized in November. The South Bank path is almost done with path paving. Currently working on, well, not currently, work for electrical for the path lighting is next. Regarding the Northeast Eugene Livable Streets projects, there are 7 enhanced crossings in Cal Young, Harlow, and Northeast that are complete. And regarding the bike map update, it is in the design phase and will be printed by the early spring, if not earlier.
Great, and then I'll give a couple more just from my end. I mentioned the expanded Peace Health Ride Service area. If you look at that map that Grace put a link into, you'll also notice that we have our first no ride area. First day we turned on that zone, we had someone park in the Amazon forest, so we had to make that a no ride area. So that was good for our ops team to figure that piece out. Regarding the Riverfront Festival, the city is contracting with Revere as the provider for that. So we are contracting out that, and Cultural Services is the main lead for that. So again, stay tuned. We'll have more information about Oregon 22 and the Riverfront Festival. It's a pretty exciting piece. And then iBike Eugene, the app, we are in the process of updating. We were hoping to launch it yesterday. We ran into some server issues, but we should in the next couple of days be able to send something out to inform people that they can update their iBike Eugene app. It's now a mobile app, or sorry, a web-based app that you can use on any browser, and then also put it onto your phone as an app via the browser. We'll have instructions on how to do that. It makes it easier for us to update it, and we have made some minor updates to it to make it a little cleaner and easier to use. And we can easily add updates without having to go through the process of the Apple Store and the Android Store and all these different pieces. We can just do it in this one web-based app. So as ATC notices things and wants to make improvements, we can make those pretty quickly. And our ISD team is really on top of it and doing some great work on it. So watch for that. I'm hoping to have it for season, which is here, but it's going to get worse. So I want to have it out for that. Watch for a community survey that Kelsey's going to send out from People for Bikes. It's time for our People for Bikes city snapshot work. And so we'll be working on some things on our end, updating a map and data, and then there'll be a community survey. So watch for that. And I think that's probably good enough for now. Get There is wrapping up. If you don't know, Get There Oregon is our transportation options program, statewide program, and you can sign up and win prizes, and you should all be tracking some trips, and there's a lot of prizes to be had. So please go there, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Fabulous. Thank you all for those excellent updates. And now we just have 6 minutes left for any other information sharing from the committee. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Bryce if he would, since he's been sitting here patiently with us, if he'd give us an update about BPAC in Springfield.
Thank you for that reminder.
Hello all. We had our last meeting on, was it Tuesday? Wow. And I got some, where are my notes here? We actually spent quite a bit of a meeting talking about a letter that we're sending to City Council regarding the CIP and what we want to kind of spend. Would like to see some of that money spent on. That was a lot of what we talked about. We also we're going to talk about e-bikes a little more, kind of shelve that for later. And Steve mentioned a bit about your path etiquette and showed us the signs. That was pretty helpful. And I think that's something that we'd like to do some more with you guys on. Collaborate, that's the word. Do a little more collaboration on that because there's a few things that we want to see kind of improved on that. And yeah, that was it's about all. Most of what we talked about was just kind of Springfield specific stuff with the CIP. But yeah, that's about all I got.
Looks like Papa has a hand.
First I'd like to thank the city on the great job done on South Willamette. I had the chance yesterday to test ride it, and it was really nice to be able to ride on the road, because many a times I've gotten into confrontations with pedestrians telling me to get on the road, and I tell them there isn't enough space, room over there. So it was great to be riding down there. Of course, it was a little bit of a shock when it ended, and all of a sudden I got into the old section. And so I'm looking forward to that also being repaved or something. But one confusion was the road leading to Civic Center. When I got there, the path, the marking disappeared, and I didn't know whether you're supposed to go to the right and then cross, or just continue. So I was a little puzzled over there, but also maybe because the light thing hasn't been set up. Any comment on that?
Which piece, Papa? Like are you talking about where the bike lane does the bump out?
Yes. So if you're going down Willamette and you're heading towards town, and you get to the street that goes to Civic Park, where you make a right. So that the marking disappears there, and then you can see an area where the pedestrians can cross, but there's no marking for the bicycles. So
yeah, that's a new facility for us. Yeah, it's called the bump out bike lane. And if I had my graphic here, I could show it to you. But if you look on some of our social media, share a picture of what that looks like. And yes, the bike lane does bump out and go into the crosswalk and then go back in. And so the bike lane continues. It just continues in a way that we hope prevents the right hook of cars coming up and turning right across the bikeway and bikes, running into the car and cars running into the bikes. By moving the bike lane out, you create a type of protected intersection where, as cars turn, they have to turn very slowly, and they have more visibility of the person riding the bike, and so there's easier eye contact and more time for reaction for the person driving. So it's the first time that we've implemented one of those. And I saw someone saying that they rode it and liked it. I've ridden it several times. I've found it works really well. But it's definitely something we're going to be monitoring and see how effective it is and collecting feedback. So please, everyone, go out and ride it and tell us what you think.
Yeah, thank you. I think next time, now I know what it's for. I'll try it that way. Thank you, Shane.
All right, Andrew, take us away.
Yeah, just really quick. I was going to say, I did like it. I've had a few cars turn when I was going through there, and I thought it worked better than a lot of intersections. So I like that we're experimenting. That was good. The one feedback I've heard from people in the community, though, was that at night, they didn't see the curbs as well as I did. And they were suggesting that maybe we need like reflective striping.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think that's being painted. I have to check with, but we definitely heard that too. So, thanks for that reiteration. And yeah.
Wonderful. With that, it is 7:30. So I'm going to go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you all for such an engaging conversation. I hope we get to do this in person one of these days. But until then, it's great to see you all on Zoom. Until next month. Farewell.